Right now, artificial intelligence feels invincible. Valuations are climbing, and tech companies are pouring cash into server racks faster than anyone can track. In 2024, the biggest players spent a little over $200 billion building AI infrastructure. By 2025, that number nearly doubled to $400 billion. This year, estimates suggest that spending will cross $700 billion. To understand the weight of that number, consider that AI infrastructure accounted for more than half of America's real GDP growth last quarter. Analysts at Deutsche Bank have noted that without this specific concentration of tech spending, the U.S. economy would be close to or already in a recession. Naturally, people see these numbers and argue about whether this is all a bubble, but they almost always argue about the software. They debate whether chatbots are a temporary fad, if they can actually reason, or whether they're going to replace thousands of white-collar jobs. However, software capability isn't the primary constraint on the timeline. The real challenge is physical, whether we can actually construct the data centers, plug them into the grid, and generate the electricity required to turn them on fast enough to justify these price tags today. Every dollar pumped into tech stocks right now assumes a schedule. The entire economy is riding on a wager that the physical hardware of the future can arrive exactly on time. The internet lives inside physical warehouses. AI data centers operate completely differently than normal commercial buildings. They don't quiet down at night or go to sleep on the weekends. They run full blast around the clock, every single day of the year, already eating up more than 4% of America's total electricity. This timeline tracks the interconnection queue. It's the regulatory waiting list to connect a new facility to the power grid. In 2008, a developer waited about 2 years to plug in. Today, that wait has stretched out to over 8 years. Tech companies usually solve problems by throwing money at them, but capital cannot magically conjure heavy machinery. The workhorse powering this entire build-out is the gas turbine, one of the most complex pieces of machinery on Earth. Manufacturers are structurally constrained, with backlogs running straight through the end of 2028. This graph illustrates the PJM capacity auction, where America's largest grid operator buys guarantees of backup power to prevent blackouts. For years, demand was flat, and a promise of power cost about $29 per megawatt day. Then the data centers arrived in mass. At the next auction, the price shot to nearly $270, and $830. It flows straight down into the electric bills of everyday residents, raising costs for millions of households across the grid's footprint. Billions of dollars in server investments are stalled because they simply cannot bypass the concrete and steel limitations of the American energy supply chain. The tech sector is ready today, but the physical world is booked solid for the next 4 years. Inside those delayed data centers is the most expensive piece of this entire bet: semiconductor chips. These are the specialized processors that actually train the artificial intelligence models, eating up the largest chunk of that $700 billion annual spend. The trouble with these processors is they age terribly. The technology moves so quickly that a cutting-edge chip maintains its value for anywhere between 2 to 6 years. Once a faster generation hits the market, the older models rapidly slide toward becoming e-waste. This creates an aggressive friction between the digital and physical worlds. The servers max out their usefulness in a few short years, but the heavy grid equipment built specifically to power them, like the substations, the massive transformers, and the transmission lines, is designed to stay on the utilities' books for decades. If an AI project scales back because its chips are suddenly outdated, that massive physical infrastructure doesn't just disappear. The costs remain locked into the system, meaning consumers will be paying off the heavy equipment long after the technology it was built for has been thrown out. This diagram illustrates a boring but crucial accounting rule called depreciation. When a company buys an expensive piece of hardware, they estimate its useful life and spread the cost over those years. If they assume a server lasts 6 years, the annual expense on their balance sheet drops, making their profits look significantly higher today. Watch what happens if that chip only actually stays relevant for 3 years. The expense condenses, eating heavily into the profit margin. This is exactly why investors like Michael Burry are accusing tech giants of cooking the books. By stretching the official lifespan of their servers from 3 years to 6, they might be drastically understating their expenses to the tune of $176 billion. NVIDIA immediately rejected that idea, publicly stating their customers get 4 to 6 years of high-performance use out of these chips without issue. But the companies actually buying the chips can't even agree with themselves. Amazon recently lowered the estimated life of its servers from 6 years back down to 5, citing the rapid pace of AI development. Meanwhile, Meta went in the complete opposite direction, extending their server lifespan to 5.5 years, a single accounting tweak that instantly added roughly $1 to their earnings per share. Two distinct tech giants, buying the exact same silicon in the exact same time period, reach completely opposite conclusions. It proves that the very financial foundation propping up these record earnings is based on wild, highly convenient guesses. We now have two clocks completely out of sync. The physical grid takes years to build, while the digital hardware expires in a fraction of that time. Right now, when factoring in supply chain and labor shortages, the odds of a new data center opening on schedule within the next 2 years drop to about 50%, a literal coin flip. This block represents every operational data center in America today, which took decades to build and altogether consume roughly 40 gigawatts of power. Now look at the gap between the chips being sold right now and the electricity actually available to run them by 2033. The deficit hits 63 gigawatts. To deliver on what investors have already paid for, America would have to find a way to power a deficit larger than the country's entire existing data center footprint, on a grid that is already tapped out. AI isn't failing, the demand is brutally real, and the technology improves every single day. But that exact success is driving grid demand faster than we can build, while rendering billion-dollar hardware obsolete before it can even pay for itself. Innovation is moving at a pace that is outdating its own infrastructure every 3 years, and it is fatally colliding with the finite, decades-long reality of the physical grid.